And get started. Well, good morning and welcome to the 10th session of Emerald Ash Borer University, everyone. My name is Amy Stone, and on behalf of Jody Ellis and Robin Usborne, I want to thank you for attending today. And just to let you know that I'm going to be presenting today's session, What Happens After the Ash is Gone. Emerald Ash Borer University is a collaborative effort of the Forest Service, Michigan State University, Ohio State University, and Purdue University. And today's session really builds upon previous sessions. You know, we've talked about the insect, its biology, and its life cycle. We've presented information on how it got here and where it is now. We've discussed management options really for both the biological and chemical treatments, and had a session on ash utilization, talked about regulatory issues related to the pest, and helping with both woodlot owners and communities plan for what's to come. So today, it's no fooling. We're here to talk about what happens after ash is gone. And while today is April Fool's Day, there's really no fooling about the devastation that the emerald ash borer can cause. And while many communities, woodland owners, and residents have lived with that experience, just as this cartoon illustrates, the bug is moving on. While I'm not sure there are any ash trees in Disney, but Emma, the emerald ash borer, will sure to find out. Today's session will focus on after ash as it relates to the emerald ash borer, and I hope to illustrate and take home messages through stories and experiences that I've seen and even lived through. To share what happens after emerald ash borer, we have to look at the actual impact and process of the death in the ash canopies, whether it be in the landscapes, urban forests, riparian areas, and in our woodlots. Today what I want to accomplish is to talk about and have people consider where is the ash in their neighborhoods, their communities, in their woodlots. Where is the borer in relationship to where they are? What else is planted or growing in the area that you're managing and the surrounding areas? Surveying the site for invasive species that may naturally take advantage of a new area. Consider options for ash tree replacements with an emphasis on diversity, and plan to properly plant and maintain the next tree and ultimately our entire forest. Sounds like we're having some issues with the audio, with echoes and continuous repeats. I hope that's not what everybody's experiencing. Maybe it's just a one-person thing. Jody, how's it sounding? Okay, working here. Great. Well, we'll just keep on plugging along here. While monocultures like this in the picture that you should be seeing on the screen can be considered beautiful by many, it isn't until after emerald ash borer goes through that many people have a change of heart. Streets like this were once lined with elms that were killed by Dutch elm disease. We repeated that same mistake, and hopefully the third time will be the charm. The idea of diversity will be multiplied and replicated across the United States, and we will learn that diversity is very important. While I realize that diversity can pose some maintenance issues because not all the trees are pruned the same, and this is obviously in more of an urban or landscape situation, there can be success of what I call a more of an arboretum look, either in landscapes, in streetscapes, and even in parks. In Livonia, for example, there was, when they lost their trees to emerald ash borer, they planted 10 different genus of trees on the same street. One thing that they noticed was that neighbors were coming out and talking about the trees that were planted in front of their property. They would compare the flowers, maybe the fruit, and the fall color, and it really actually brought neighbors together. Okay, we'll keep with us and hopefully the audio will clear up. Okay, homeowners may only have one tree. In this case, they actually need to look at what's planted in their neighborhood, the neighbors to either side, maybe across the street, or even down the street. If they're seeing the same plant planted in a variety of other homes and landscapes, they really should consider something different, something unique. Although choosing a plant that will do well in their landscape, with their soil type, and with the exposure that that plant will have in their neighborhood. Woodland owners actually need to explore their forests. Do they have a few ashes in the scheme of the overall forest that really isn't going to have a huge impact when emerald ash borer comes through? Or in the case of this particular woodland in central Ohio, over 60% of the trees are ash. The impact will be huge. Going back to the woodland management session, being proactive in planning for the arrival of the borer is very important. These plans can help the owner feel a sense of control, because if emerald ash borer arrives and nothing was done to prepare, there can be a feeling of helplessness. Riparian areas are another area of concern. Often we find large numbers of ash in these areas, and after the ash are gone, issues will include soil erosion, invasive plants that can become a nightmare, and will need to be addressed. These potential problems will last much longer than the quick kill of emerald ash borer. All right. I see Jody's comments. It's getting worse, getting better. Hopefully we can figure this situation out. And actually, Jody, now I'm having an issue with the actual PowerPoint presentation, and I'm not sure what you're seeing on your screen. Is it still the riparian area with the stream going through? Okay, thank you. Well, this is going to be very interesting because I still have the picture of the riparian areas up on my screen. If we go back, I'm going to just address the ash trees in the parking lot with the ball fields in the back. The ash trees were a resilient tree planted sometimes in very tough conditions. Infested trees that surround this community park, which includes baseball fields and soccer fields in the far background. While they're not all the way out, I mean, they still have a little life left in them. There is space between the trees that are actually planted. While this isn't always the case, this site provides an opportunity to plant even before the ash trees are gone. Some communities have decided to manage emerald ash borer by removing ash trees, and in fact can do this on the street, where maybe they remove every third, fourth tree and replace that while there's still ash canopy in place, and that would be part of the management decision. I'm going to go ahead and try to adjust to the next slide. Which should be a sign with the forest scene drive. While many enjoy a forest scene, this drive is now barren and the only words remain. I do want to say that some people, communities and business and others, are trying to protect their trees from emerald ash borer. Jody did an excellent session back in December highlighting some of the research and the successes and failures that we've talked about and factors for each. People are keeping trees alive, but know that the percentage of trees that are being treated is minimal when you look at the total number of ash trees in North America. Okay, now I am seeing the Forest Scene Drive on my screen, and hopefully you're seeing that same picture. All right. Next, you should actually see a canopy of a dead ash tree kind of looking up the main trunk. So we've actually arrived, and we're at the point of after ash. Hopefully later than sooner, especially in your landscapes, your communities, and woodlands. We would like to see and have people be prepared for the infestation and the negatively impacted areas for the beetle. Sound back in. Okay. This is really an April Fool's Day, and I guess we're the fools relying on this type of training on a day like today. Well, the next slide, and hopefully Robin, you can, or Jody, it should be a cut stump. Some trees will be cut down, especially those in high-trafficked area where there's a concern about safety issues. The specific trunk that you're seeing here, or stump, was actually grown at a botanical gardens in what was commonly referred to as the Jazz Lawn on Thursday nights throughout the summer, where the concerts played. This tree was in excess of about 40 inches at diameter at breast height and was not a small tree. The next photo that you should be seeing is a stump grinder, and even though the tree was mature in size, because of the other plants in the surrounding area, it really won't be missed by the casual visitor. In fact, one more blanket can now be laid on the lawn to enjoy those summer concerts. So although replacements are important, and we really stress that, there are probably situations where it's not going to always happen or need be. The next slide is actually of an ash planting in the entrance of a park in the Toledo area. This area could actually become an open grassy field, or replacement trees of large canopy could be planted because there's no restrictions as far as buildings, wires, or other interferences that may get in the way of the trees growing. If you're dealing with ash, a question to consider is, was it a good plant in that place? Was the size okay? And we'll get into that when we talk about the publications and the other references that are available to use as resources when you're looking at what to do after the ash are gone. The impact here in this community is actually more substantial. Imagine a non-monoculture look that really should be planted in the future. Maybe something for every season. Flowers in the spring and summer, fruit for interest in the summer and fall, and various shades of fall color. Considerations are the soil type, exposure, and of course maintenance levels, including watering during the establishment period, are things to consider when deciding what trees to replant where the ash once grew. The question versus trees versus no trees really isn't an option in this situation. Shade is imperative in this community. The next photo you should be seeing is actually a residential setting with some ash trees that are in stages of decline in the front yard. Additionally, they did have some ash trees in their backyard. So looking at this property, the loss of the ash trees will obviously open their front yard up, which sometimes somehow gave them some privacy. So they may consider planting additional trees, although they do have trees in their front yard that could then just grow, get larger, as well as trees on both sides. And so this is a individual property owner's issue that they need to figure out what works for them. It's very difficult to see in the picture, but you can see a power line that's running through, which could be a concern in planting trees that maybe wouldn't grow into the power lines or be a problem with that. In this situation, while all the trees are in the rear of the home, access can be an issue for removal, and replanting due to the riparian area and wet conditions where water stands throughout most of the time of the year. Windows of planting may be small but can be accomplished if given enough time. In some sites, actually seeding or seedlings may be an option, especially if the homeowner is actually planting large number of trees that could be costly. The one thing I think we all have learned that have lived through emerald ash borer is that time is on your side if it hasn't arrived yet. It's important to prepare people for what will happen to the ash. Next week, we're actually having a session on Emerald Ash Borer Awareness Week and talking about ways to raise awareness about the insect. In years past, we've actually done some work with signage on trees to raise awareness about the number of ash trees that are in a community, that are planted in our parks, on residential streets, in woodlands, just to give people the chance to take this all in and look and see what's at risk for the emerald ash borer when it does arrive in your community. You can pick out ash and highlight them and know that people will realize that ash trees are all around. In response to emerald ash borer and the loss of the ash trees, many states have developed bulletins that are accessible online and also hard copies. This example is the bulletin that Michigan State University Extension put together and is available at emeraldashborer.info under the replanting link on the left-hand side. This 12-page bulletin lists trees that would be replacements for ash. They include the height and the spread, the site preference, ornamental characteristics, insects and disease factors if there are those to consider, and also cultivars if there are particular varieties or cultivars that are recommended for certain sites. Ohio did their version of something similar. And again, each state is kind of tweaking the publication to kind of meet their residents' needs. In Ohio, we focused on more the native type plants, and they tend to be the larger canopy trees. So it truly is an ash replacements bulletin. It's going to replace trees that had large canopies that grew where ash typically would grow in. If ash was not the right plant for the place because of the size, because of wires, or other considerations, it probably won't be as useful. Our ash replacements bulletin can be linked through the emeraldashborer.info or is also on the ashalert.osu.edu site. In Illinois, their Department of Agriculture has come up with several lists based on regions or areas of the state. Included on their list are plants, the planting site that they would do well in, other planting. It includes the genus, the species, and cultivars, and also it has some comments in the actual kind of beginning of the bulletin that stresses diversity, and that maybe they have omitted some plants on the list that are very common, that people are aware of, that have been grown, but the committee that put the list together felt that because of all of those trees that are commonly planted, they were trying to provide lists that in the reforestation efforts would really create a diverse urban forest. When we talk about tree diversity, sure, mixing things up are a good thing, but the first thing you need to do is actually know what you have. We've stressed the importance of ash inventories to communities, to residents, to woodland owners, to know what they have that's at risk, but we also have to know what's going to be in our forest after the ash are gone, and so what's left. And I think a lot of the communities, a lot of the residents have noticed that even if they had a high percentage of ash, the percentage of maples tends to be even higher. And so the idea of a 30-20-10 rule, we'll go over that, as well as just some hints about proper planting and care once the trees are in the ground. First, when we talk about tree diversity, there's a 30-20-10 rule. And if we can just focus on having that kind of be our goal as we replant, especially in the urban forest, I think that we'll be much better off and our forest will be more diverse. And what that rule says is that no more than 30% of a particular family should be planted, no more than 20% of the same genus be planted, and no more than 10% of a species. And so with that diversity, sometimes people actually have to go back. I think we're all familiar with the genus and species of particular trees, but take that one step back and look at the family, because often when insects and diseases attack, sometimes they're family specific rather than genus specific, like the emerald ash borer. So we want to mix things up. I think another common thing that we've seen is that maples, for example, because there's a lot of them out there, maybe there were a lot of red maples in a particular community, and so when somebody goes out to buy a new plant, they were planting a Norway maple. And they said, well, it's different than the other maples, but they're still in that same genus and again susceptible to some of the same problems. When we talk about tree diversity, once we get those trees in the ground that are diverse and I have a variety of characteristics that bring to our urban environment and our rural woodlots, we want to make sure that they're planted properly and cared for so they can live and be successful. A big issue is the actual planting depth and making sure that the trees are put in the ground at that proper depth. And so when we're putting the trees in the ground, we're looking for that root flare. Often people are putting the trees in the same depth that they came either out of the container or the ball and burlap, and what we've found is sometimes soil gets piled up either in those containers or in the balls, and that root flare is actually buried and not at that top level that we'd like to see. So when you have a particular plant, start pulling back the soil a little bit until you find that natural root flare, and that's where you want that plant at the top surface of the soil, and so you can have a successful planting and the tree won't struggle because of planting depth issues. Watering is very important, especially in newly established plants, and if we want to make sure that they're successful that first year, 2 years, 3 years, so they can become truly large, mature, healthy trees to establish our forest for years to come. And then also pruning is an important process and training of those new trees. And if we prune them properly to begin with, they'll be healthy, vigorous, and they'll have the standards set as they continue to grow and become better trees. Just want to kind of have a few examples of after ash and some of the stories that I've seen and experienced. This was actually a resident in the Toledo area who had probably the largest ash tree in northwest Ohio on their property. And it was a very sad story to kind of see this tree decline and ultimately die. And what this property owner did, obviously it changes the look of the house dramatically from the street, but they've opted for two different plants to replace that one large tree. Now the tree to the far right actually could have been planted earlier to kind of get established as that large tree was still there, but they opted to replace the trees at the same time, and so it's going to be a while before they give the shade of that once tree that stood, but again, it's an option for the homeowner. The next photo that hopefully will be up on your screen is actually more of a natural area where a homeowner had built a house, and as they cleared the land and prepared to build the house, the trees that they picked for their canopy were actually ash trees. And so now they were faced with the situation that the majority of shade that they were receiving, the trees that were surrounding their house, were going to be lost to the emerald ash borer. And so what they've done, and hopefully what you can see, is they've interplanted some additional trees. Emerald ash borer has not arrived on their property yet. They are doing some monitoring, but to buy time, they're actually planting some oaks, maples, other trees in with the ash to kind of give them time to grow before they lose the ash trees because of emerald ash borer. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, we all have kind of our favorite resources, and if you go to emeraldashborer.info in the replanting site, there actually are some really good links, including information on the recommended alternatives to ash in Michigan, as well as selecting trees for an urban forest, which includes a kind of interactive site that you can actually choose trees by their family. And so we talked about that 30-20-10 rule, and this information on that site is actually very good. It talks about plants suitable under power lines, wet conditions, tolerate stresses, and so it's just a really good interactive site that again you can get to through emeraldashborer.info. We probably all have our favorite books kind of sitting in our libraries. The Illustrated Encyclopedia of Trees is a great reference book. The Manual of Landscape Plants by Michael Durr, as well as his companion guide of the hardy trees and shrubs. And so there's a lot of good reference materials out there, and I just caution people when they're talking with others or trying to decide on a replacement plan for their community, their landscape, their woodland, that often people want a simple replacement, maybe just a one or two trees that, hey, that would be great. But I always tell people we don't want to get into that same situation where in 10 years we have a mature forest starting to build of another monoculture that may be at risk to another insect or disease. And so I leave you today on April Fool's Day with a little stone design that one of our Master Gardener volunteers did for an extension educator who just recently had emerald ash borer found in her county, and only if we could control the insect that way. But again, to really highlight the importance of diversity and the resources that are out there on the Emerald Ash Borer info site, and things to consider when replanting after the Emerald Ash Borer goes through, or even proactively planting and trying to change our forest through this pest. We also want to kind of highlight kind of the upcoming season for Emerald Ash Borer University. And one of those sessions that we are going to do, and if you can help get the word out, is Jody Ellis will be doing a program on Emerald Ash Borer for homeowners. And the event will take place on April the 22nd. And it's going to be at 7 o'clock in the evening. And so this webinar will be in the evening, hopefully very convenient for homeowners who may work during the day, but we'll be getting more information out about that. But if you could also kind of promote that to your people, the community residents, that would be excellent. I'm sorry we had so much kind of glitches in the technical side of things today. Let me see, going through some of the emails or the chat comments here. The names of the book by Michael Durr, Catherine, were The Manual of Woody Landscape Plants, and then also Durr's Hardy Trees and Shrubs. Both are excellent resources. The Manual of Woody Landscape Plants is in the 6th edition and is just a great resource book. Line drawings, a lot of information, and then his companion book, Durr's Hardy Trees and Shrubs, actually has photos and just is a joy to look through to see some of the beautiful trees that he recommends. Also, Jody wanted me to highlight that we will be incorporating some evening sessions during next year. We have the schedule set, and you'll be seeing that up on the emeraldashborer.info. All right, does anybody else have any other chats or questions? If not, thank you for spending your April Fool's Day with us and hopefully getting through some of those technical glitches. And again, just keep on spreading the word about diversity in the urban forest and the rural forest.